Hi, my name is JoeAnn Hart. I'm the author of Arroyo Circle, a novel where hoarding and homelessness are portrayed against environmental degradation and rampant capitalism. The story is set in Boulder, Colorado, and the characters are Shelley, a white middle aged handmaiden of a hoarder, and Les, an unsheltered, shape shifting scientist. My relationship with Boulder goes back to 1977 when I arrived the same week that the Pearl Street Mall was began. Um, and so, uh, which makes me bet pretty old, makes me as old as dirt. But it does not make me as old as the Boulder Bookstore, which opened in 1973 when Pearl Street was a street. I think they were actually around the corner on 11th First, and then came to Pearl. Um, but it was there long before I got there. Not long, a few years before I got there. I only lived in Boulder a couple of years, but I've been going back for all these decades. I have friends and relatives there, and every time I'm there, I always stop in at the Boulder Bookstore, an amazing place, and it's been great to watch it grow and just be this amazing place that it is. And I looked through my house to see if I had a book that I had bought there when I lived there in the late '70s, and sure enough, I do. I have the Moosewood Cookbook by Molly Katzen. I am still very much using it. It is much loved. There's notes all over it, all sorts of drippings. Best gazpacho ever. I got it there and in the Boulder Bookstore, and I'm sure that they have found a home for the Moosewood Cookbook with thousands of homes throughout the Boulder area and even here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Um, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book, and then I'll read a couple of pages of it. I started writing Aurora Circle in 2017 when my brother died. For most of his life, he was a homeless alcoholic, and I didn't wanna let him go, so I created this character, Les, and, um, and kept him going in a way, at least, in my heart. Unlike Les, my brother was not a scientist, but I use a good deal of science in my writing, and it seemed like the best place to put all that information was in Les's brain. Because, when you're writing about nature and the climate crisis, you really have got to get the science right. I do a great deal of research, before I write anything. Um, but I also felt that Les was a quantum physics sort of guy, not just weather. He's actually a cloud scientist, but he's very much he's a quantum physics guy, because quantum physics is, so metaphysical. It is, a subject that the more you learn, the more incomprehensible the universe becomes until you start doubting your own existence, and that's sort of Les all over. I also gave Les a good dose of Buddhism because it's Boulder, after all. You've got Naropa, or I hear it might be moving. That'd be scary. Um, but anyway, I gave him Buddhism, and then 'cause Boulder, but also because 'cause I'm a Unitarian myself, and that is, and Unitarians lean very much towards Buddhism and all acceptance. I put a lot of knowledge of quantum physics and Buddhism in Les, a lot of which I got from following Maria Popova's newsletter, the Marginalian. I've been following it for years and and doing her book recommendations and as she's trying to figure out this what is life and what is the meaning of it and the universe. Um, I can highly recommend that. I've been following it before Substack even. So the plot for Royal Circle grew out of a real life incident that happened to a friend of mine here in Boulder. She was at McGuckin's. I use King Soopers, but she was at McGuckin's, and she put kitty litter in the trunk of her car, and on the way home, she was completely surrounded by the police with guns. And so everything in the book started from that. Everything else, I did a lot of extensive research, as I said, especially about the wildfires, of which there's been so much wonderful work written about wildfires. I really feel as if I've gone through them. But just, like, seeing those photos of Boulder and Fort Collins a couple years ago, it was horrifying. I lived through the pandemic as we all did, so that was sort of lived experience, although it was lived experience in my house, not out on the streets in Boulder. And I didn't get COVID, but so I had to research that, and, there's obviously, but I knew a lot of people who'd had it, so that wasn't that difficult. So I do my reading and research in the afternoons and night and take notes, and then in the mornings, I'm sort of fresh out of bed is when I'll do my writing. And so I'm still a little dreamy, and if that's what works. So I don't just read science books and papers. I read a great deal of fiction for my research because there's a lot to be learned through fiction. Nonfiction tells us what happened, but fiction tells us how it felt, how everybody experienced it. In that vein, the last novel I read that deeply moved me was Northwoods by Daniel Mason. It was beautiful and heartrending story of a piece of land through centuries, since colonialism, and then a little beyond, and it you get very attached to this piece of land and Western Massachusetts. I'm in Eastern Massachusetts, but no matter where you are, you will become attached and see, the in ways in which that we have hurt the planet and how damaging colonialism and capitalism is on the earth. But it's also very funny. It's very witty and very smart. Um, the best nonfiction book I've read recently is Soil, the story of a Black woman's garden by Camille Dungy. She is just in Fort Collins, and this is the story of her building a garden but going back in history and about the intersection of of racism and ecological devastation and her personal history and bigger American history and about her experience of being a Black woman in a white space and gardening. And it's just there's just pain and heart on every page. She is a poet by but that's what she is a poet, but these are not poems. This is a nonfiction book, but it's written poetically. It's just gorgeous. I'm going to read a short passage from Arroyo Circle, but before I do, I want to say one last word about it, and that the subject matter may be grim, but the book is not grim. It is, it's the thing about humans is that we became the most successful species on Earth, at least for now, because we're adaptable. And we muddle through like the very worst that we think can ever happen to us, and we survive because we're able to adapt and muddle through, and then we shrug and eventually laugh because really, what else are our options? So here, little few words, a couple pages from Arroyo Circle, and this is early chapter. It's an early last chapter. It was the time of great calming. Subatomic particles were speeding to the stars with lighter helium leading the way. Daytime beasts had gone to ground. Tiny canyon bats swirled into the alpenglow, sun red clinging to the smoky mountain tops after the dimming of the tableland. The emergence. A few hours of dark, then horizon glow, then disappearance. Hello and goodbye, over and over into infinity. Les remembers emergence as a systems theory. Decisions will happen naturally. Night creatures emerge at dusk with no conscious input. But what about animals he sees skulking around who shouldn't be up all night? The melancholy coyotes now nocturnal to avoid humans. Bears, too. It's a pretty conscious decision. Someone or something decides. The invisible hand or claw. Where an animal simply acts, a human first decides what it wants. But there's no limit to what we want. So emergence, a failed systems theory like all the rest. Les sat on the curb and continued to watch the full moon rise, that bright reflector of our light and desires, a mishmash of planetary debris from Earth's collision with Thea, a hypothetical planet. Well, weren't we all hypothetical? Parabolas of night clouds and fire clouds drifted across the stars as smoothly as it rose from his hand-rolled cigarette, tobacco poking out of the end like nose hairs. The keen wind rattled through the dry brush. Wait, no, not wind, not wind, but the mumbled hoot of the flammulated owl. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Smoked out of the burning canyon and into Shelley's yard. Force from home, force from life, the world painfully out of joint. Smoke stink from the canyon getting stronger with the hour. Not for nothing, but his sense of time passing was now more acute than the cesium atomic clock down the road at the Standards Building. They reconciled cosmic and atomic time, but always fell short. Not so him. Astrophysics 101. There is no absolute time the whole universe obeys. Time is defined by what happens around it and by the distance between points. He'd done his business in town and came back. That was some time ago, and Shelley's still gone. The gal was a bolt of lightning looking for a place to strike, and he guessed she'd found it. Gone, gone, gone. So was the tobacco, which had finished its transformation from dried plant in his hand to volatile gases in his lungs to nicotine receptors in his brain. What he liked about night was that it shut out overrated sight and enhanced the other senses. Touch, smell, hearing, and all those many senses that had no name. He shredded the remains with bitten fingers, and while he was not one of those highly attuned creatures who could hear a leaf land on asphalt, he could sense the tobacco shreds fall to the pavement like an echo in the dark cave of his torso, the way he could sense the gravitational rush of a grape as it fell from stem to earth. What a release that must be. So that's all I'll read. Um, I will see you on Pearl on the mall.